Hi everyone and welcome to the board. We're finally back after a few weeks of having a mad busy time and postponing the board. So this is also Paul's last board.
That's right.
As he's sadly leaving us to go across town to work with someone else, but I'm sure we'll still see him a lot and perhaps we can have him back as a guest at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's make it a good one, shall we?
Today we're going to be talking about designing agile spaces. So this is something that came up yesterday when I facilitated Scrunch Lunch here at Boost, and it was a contact of ours talking about how they were redesigning their space so that it really worked for the team to work in an optimum way, and he'd had some really interesting ideas, and so did a couple of other attendees, and I know you've had some thoughts about it as well, Paul.
Absolutely. And for me this is like just about the way that we work as an agile environment, where this is a lot about discovery and creating space for innovation and so on. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I think it's a really important conversation to have.
It is. So one of the things that it was actually Jeremy from IGPS was saying is that he's finding that at their office they don't need as many desks anymore because people are always working together.
That's right.
So and they're also finding people are moving a lot. So they're really making that move to activity-based working in a very natural way. The pull is coming from the team for that, rather than it sort of being imposed by management saying no one's going to have a desk now. They're really looking for that kind of environment. So the sorts of things that they're looking at are desks on wheels, which I like the idea of. Just pull it up where you need it. And reducing the amount of desks, obviously. They've got laptops and big monitors. They found no one's using the monitors, they're just grabbing their laptops and going wherever they need to go.
Right.
Which is an interesting point, isn't it? Because we've thought about monitors, but if you didn't need them. So when we were talking yesterday, one of our other attendees, Tanya, from a company down the road, was mentioning that what Jeremy could try is prototyping the office layout with cardboard boxes, which I think is such a great idea. It's a really lo-fi way of getting some quick insights, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a bit more about that. What would they do? What would they do with the cardboard boxes?
Yeah, so instead of having to place their monitors in certain places, they would just have cardboard boxes representative of monitors, for example, and computers and whatever else that normally sits on a desk. Even to an extent you could do some structures representing desks in that way, couldn't you? And then to have people just move them around and test out how that feels and how it would work for them. She's also talking about some other interesting ideas in layouts. One that struck me was, how people have an issue with waiting for the lift to arrive. I know at our office we've got one fast lift and one very, very slow lift. It's very frustrating if the fast lift's in use. She said she'd read somewhere you put a mirror beside the lift and people mind waiting for the lift a lot less because they just occupy themselves looking in the mirror. like birds.
I'm only laughing because I'd probably do that.
I totally would. I really like lifts that have a mirror at the back, so when you're on your way to meeting you can fix your hair on the way
That's
up.
right. And make sure there's no cappuccino stains on your moustache or
spinach in your
like
teeth, all that sort of thing. And it really makes that lift ride go pretty quick when there's a mirror in, doesn't it?
That's right.
Because we find ourselves endlessly fascinating.
I mean, what's interesting for me is to see the sort of our evolution in terms of what we've done from going from. I remember the time when we were all separate and all the developers had different spaces, and then. What
did that look like? Was it actually separate desks on their own, with air around it?
Well, what we had was like maybe 2 or 3 desks together.
Oh, okay. So when I joined, it was like that.
And then we we had 2 or 3 desks, and then we have another pod with 2 or 3 desks, and then we went to that kind of moment where all of our software developers sat on one desk.
Yes, that massive pod.
That massive pod, the mega pod as we called it, and the reason the developers did that was so that we could talk. We get a lot of a lot of our communication takes place it's almost by osmosis, I think is the word I'm looking for. So we hear other conversations happening.
Absolutely, and that's about really removing those barriers to communication, isn't it? So that does happen, facilitating that.
So someone will be talking about something else, and you'll overhear the conversation, you'll get interested, you'll start listening, you might even chip in, and then suddenly there's a whole different conversation that you might not have been involved in because it might have not even been a project that was relevant to you, or what something that you're currently working on. And so those kind of open space environments really help with that. I mean, it can be distracting, and that's some of the other things that you have to consider with these kind of environments, is that sometimes people want to work quietly, and they need to concentrate, because we're often solving complex problems.
True.
And everyone has that in their work. They need some quiet time. So what's interesting is that some companies they've set up booths which are
soundproof.
Not soundproof
to an extent,
but they're quite thick, kind of. They're not a traditional kind of separator. They're they're quite comfy. They're a bit like the AV pods.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining. So that's kind of got a roof over but open sides.
That's right. Yeah. And then you go and sit in there, and you've got your computer screen. You're probably using a laptop, and you use something like a Chromecast device to actually
broadcast onto the
cast your screen onto the bigger screen.
That sounds fancy.
Yeah, those kind of things. And so you're just in your own little space there. Other things I've seen is where they set up bigger booths, and they've got, so it's a bigger pod basically, with a round or a semi, ellipse. It's the word. It's
like the moon.
Yeah.
A crescent.
A long table. Basically.
Oh right. So basically for a team that needs some quiet together.
Quiet, yeah, and they can sit together and huddle and discuss. And
I think when I'm thinking about our office is quite quiet on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's right.
Apart from like 5 o'clock on a Friday evening when we're drinking, but so I was thinking when I walked out of that meeting we had yesterday, and we'd been talking about agile workspaces. So I went out and I saw that we've got a couple of tables that are kind of breakout areas. No one ever uses them. Very rarely do they get used, apart from, again, drinks on a Friday night. Yeah. And I thought that space would be better used if it had a couple of sofas there.
Yeah.
To make it a comfortable, inviting space for people to sit and chat something through. Yeah. Because at the moment the tables are nice, but they're a bit formal.
That's right, and they're and people don't really sit down there, do they? They come there and they talk. They're standing usually, and they're standing around the table. They don't usually sit down.
That's right. Whereas if we had the sofas, there would be places for individuals to go to have a sit down and think about something, but also for a team to have a chat.
And we've got a few beanbags around the office as well. That'd be quite a good space for a couple of sofas and a beanbag.
Beanbags are definitely for younger people, I find. I always feel like I need a hoist to get me out of it.
I love beanbags myself, but
they're just really like getting off the floor. But I'm sure they'd suit some of the other guys.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's even people who like sitting on the floor. They love sitting on the floor, and having those low tables, like Japanese style tables.
This skirt.
I know it. My wife does it all the time. She's always
she works in a slightly different industry, I suppose, where she's in comfy clothes.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the key thing with this is that just looking at the way we work, the Cynefin model, which is the sense-making model, which describes the kind of problems we're obviously or we're usually solving in our industry. They require innovation, and what we're trying to do is create these spaces for innovation. And so, in the same sense, it makes complete sense to me that these spaces shouldn't be static; they should evolve, and people should be allowed to experiment with the spaces that they use for
and move them around. Absolutely, they should be able to do what works for them, all of us. Certainly, I mean, when I was thinking about the sofas yesterday, what I did with that idea was just write a post-it note and stick it on the suggestion board, actually, to see whether there's any sort of interest in creating some new spaces.
I think it's really worth it. I think it's just saying, well, we're going to try this out, and if it doesn't work, or if anyone, I would go with like the Perfect 10 style retro, and just say, well, can we score this space from a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being perfect, 1 being not good at all, and then ask the team what would make it a perfect 10. If unless everybody's up in the 10, of course, and saying yes, it's a perfect space, then what would make this space a perfect 10, and let's work out what we need to do that. And I'm sure we get some relative. The guys would be, they'd give some honest feedback.
I'm sure. I was thinking in terms of prototyping a more sort of relaxed area, such as sofas and beanbags, bit more difficult with cardboard boxes, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
You can't really sit on them to see how that feels. It's not the same as sitting on a sofa, even if you could sit on a cardboard box effectively. So it's kind of, you know, if everyone was bought into it, it's kind of all or nothing. You've either got them or you don't.
Yeah. So I'm interested because obviously it's about collaboration, and that's the key thing we're trying to invite here is, well, collaboration, and obviously depending on, like we discussed, there's different spaces for different activities, and so there's quiet spaces, there's team spaces, there's group or bumping into people. You know, that whole water cooler kind of concept from the 80s or 90s, whenever that arose. You know,
and actually I think the idea of the sofas as a broker area is really great for lunchtimes as well, particularly because our kitchen's freezing in winter. Because I mean, we do tend to sit around the table in summer, you know, for lunch and chat, but in winter we're kind of at our desks, it's too cold. So I think, in fact, I've worked in an office where we've had sofas and we all used to sit down there for lunch and chat, not about work usually, which is important as well, you know.
That's right, to have a break. It's really good to have a break from what you're doing, and you know, it's often the time when you get that lateral thinking happening as well, because you go off and, you know, you get away from the problem you're trying to solve, and suddenly some spark will happen. Yeah, that's right.
So we've got sofas in this room, which is great because it's a really handy space for a chat. However, it can be a bit I don't know what the word for it is. Basically, if, say for example, you and I come in here for a chat, it does look a bit to the team like we're having a secret conversation, you know, which is not a great look. And sometimes we do need to have confidential conversations, but there are a lot of conversations that we do have in here, which is another reason that I want some comfy space out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can have conversations with you without it being mysterious.
Now, there's this movement at the moment which is kind of interesting, and I haven't seen much about it. I've seen one blog post about these guys who are basically telling that they're giving a homely feel to their office, and they're making it more like home.
Oh yeah, you're saying that this morning,
And I find that interesting because I've always kind of seen office and home as a separate space.
That's the thing. I like the separation also.
Yeah, I like to be. You know, I like to be at home and I like to be in the office, and they're different. I'm in different modes when I'm in those spaces. I'm just interested to see where this movement sort of goes, though. What
would be the purpose of that? To make people feel comfortable, or
comfortable and you know. I guess it's. I wonder if it's to some degree trying to make it, you know, saying, well, it's your home, you know, let's make it a space that you want to work in, you know. It
just sounds like trying to encourage people to stay longer.
Yeah.
You know, like they might get confused and think they're at home.
That's right, and that's obviously you know, an issue for people. And I know people who actually do sleep in their offices as well, you know. Those kinds of crazy things.
Well, you know, just the other week we were talking to one of our newer team members who wanted in one day and turned out to be fantastic, so we hired him. And he used to work in India, and one of his first jobs, I don't know if you were there for this, you were. So he was saying that they made it very comfortable there. They had some beds upstairs and there was a pool and a gym. And he absolutely didn't mind spending 24 hours at work because he could work in the middle of the night if he wanted, whatever was convenient for him. And then when he didn't want to work, there were all the facilities he needed to be there. So that was an interesting idea, but it's not for everyone, that kind of environment.
But it takes me back to I mean, you know, this is going back a bit. We're talking about the new towns in the UK that were set up by industrialists, like Bourneville, Cadbury.
Around the factory kind of thing.
The town was called Bourneville, I believe.
Right.
And it was set up by Cadbury for his workers. And to give them, because obviously accommodation was quite poor in those days. You know, workers didn't have the best home environments, and so what he did was create housing for his workers, and then they had a much better life outside of work, which meant they were much better,
more productive at work, etc.
And you know, and it was that kind of psychology that he used, which was really good. He was actually quite a humanitarian in his, you know, in his own way, but he as a result he got much better results from his workers. You know? And that's that kind of thing. I think that's what they're doing with the home kind of away from home environment.
And similarly, I think with this, you know, this place in India that made it very comfortable for people to live there, essentially. You know, but I think as I was saying, it's not for everyone.
No.
You know, I know that our team member at the time that he was single and just interested in learning more and more about code, so it really suited him to be there a lot of the time. But you know, he's married now. I can't imagine he'd want to work in that way now.
Yeah. So I mean, and the thing I'm interested in these new activity-based spaces is that they're about creativity and about collaboration and about you know, because we work in this kind of experimentation kind of spirit of it. We have to experiment with the way that we build, we innovate, you know. And so and I'm not sure that my home is the place that I want to, you know, innovate. You know, my home is the place that I usually relax. No, you just want to switch off, don't you? Well, it's about switching off, but it's also, like I say, you still have those moments when you have to, you know, you're in the shower and you go, oh, yeah, that's the... And you need that space that's different from your workspace in order to elicit that sometimes. But I don't necessarily want a whiteboard in my shower, though, where I can suddenly start writing things down. Well, it wouldn't work because it's wood. Yeah, that's right. So what's the new office like? The new office, they're activity-based. Yeah. They've got, so they've got a mixture of standing and sitting desks. They've got their breakout areas. The interesting thing, the really interesting thing is they've got the office space is it's two ends of a building which kind of they've got a central kind of atrium. Oh, I like that. Yeah. And lots of nice light in the middle of the building. Yeah, beautiful light, and they've got little areas like terrace areas that you can sit out in different on those floors. Sort of looking out over the balcony. Yeah, and and the other offices in the building have all got, they're not shut off, they're not completely, they've got half height glass, so you can kind of lean over the glass and shout down. I've worked in an office like that. We worked on the ground floor, and upstairs in corporate comms there was a lady with an incredibly loud sneeze, and I never got to know who it was, but because it was all open like that around an atrium, every time she sneezed everyone was like, what? Yeah. It's hilarious. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, you're gonna hear. Yeah, you're gonna hear a bit of chatter, and if someone's a loud sneezer. And but the nice thing is, like, I think there's areas that you can, that wouldn't usually be so open and inviting around the lifts and so on, like you were saying about the mirror and so on. But those conversations that you have around when you bump into people at the lift, people that you don't usually see. So you can then just sort of, like, maybe there's some chairs near there, so you can just postpone your lift trip and sit down for a bit. Oh yeah, nice to see you. Let's sit down and have a chat, you know. Actually, the one that I worked in with that atrium, it's quite a new building. It's an engineering firm, so they had to build a whole bunch of new buildings for themselves. Yeah. That actually had the kitchen and cafe style breakout areas by the lift. Right. So you could just drift over to there. Yeah, the ground floor's got a cafe downstairs as well. So. Oh yeah. So is that like a cafe just for your organisation, or is it a? It's a cafe for all of the companies that are in the, cool. Building. So yeah, it's and they've got a kitchen. The organisation itself has got a kitchen area, which is quite, you know, it's got stalls and high bench tops and different spaces that you can sit down and chat and so on. So yeah, it's got a whole different range of spaces. And I think part of this is because this is complete. The company I'm going to work for have only just moved into this building, and I think it's part of an experiment for them to work out. They want to collaborate more. This is definitely a thing they're trying to achieve. So, well, it's a great start. I mean, and of course, moving into a new building is a perfect opportunity to do an interesting refit. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's so different from the space they were in before, which was kind of closed and old. Traditional, yeah. Was it, you know, what do you call it, partitions and stuff? I don't think they had partitions, but there were definitely people with offices, and and the meeting rooms are very kind of, you know, you couldn't see who was in the meeting room. The door was closed, and so on. Whereas the new building has got all the meeting rooms have sort of frosted glass with little windows, so you can see. This is really handy if you're looking for someone. Yeah, exactly. You know, you can just sort of run past, have a look, signal to them. So I was telling someone last night, we had some people come over to our office last night, and I always find people are really fascinated by our office and quite impressed by the view and the fact that we've got a massive space in the middle. Yeah. And I was saying that it used to be quite different. Obviously I wasn't around at the time. Did you see this office before it was refitted? I did, yeah, briefly, yeah. Because it had a completely closed in middle section, which was like a meeting room or boardroom. With no windows. Grim. No natural light. Yeah, wow. I mean, you know, it's, to me, I kind of
get what the office is like, because I'm here every day, I'm very jaded to it, but to have people come in and say what an amazing space kind of reminds me and you know, prompts me to think about what else we could do with it as well.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely, because we set the space up, you know, it was designed by us, you know.
Yeah.
So I think
good job.
Yeah.
Well done.
and I think, you know, there's an opportunity for us to
revisit. Yeah, I mean, because, you know, we were talking about moving offices recently, and it's one of those things that, you know, is always the last thing on your list when you've got a list of things to do, though, to look at offices and things. And what we actually came to in the end was, let's not move. It's a great space. It's good size. Let's actually just think about making some improvements. You know, it's like if it ain't broke, I mean, it might be slightly broken, we might want to slightly fix it. Yeah. But I think, you know, rather than going through the trauma of a move, we don't really need to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and we're lucky we do have a large space, so we can do a lot with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've got different spaces for different. You know, we just maybe just rethink some of the spaces that we've got, maybe, and try and come up with different ways of using them.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is not waste so much space. Some of the spaces are a little bit wasted. Yeah. I think, you know, particularly the area by the door.
Yeah, totally.
But one comment last night, someone came in and said, "Oh, isn't it great that you guys have got so much space to themselves? I'm sort of used to walking in and seeing developers packed in."
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, that sounds.
That's how it used to be.
And in fact, I went to a friend's office in London when I was there in May, and that's what it was like. A big-ish room, but yeah, set up with, you know, the desks that run like that, so you're looking at someone, so rows like that, just packed, and you could barely move between them. I was aghast. I was like, man, how do you do any work? Because there's a lot of people in there.
That's right.
You know.
I mean, the great thing about our bigger desks and our space is that one, they're height adjustable desks. So and when you're standing, we've mentioned this a couple of times, but when you're standing, you're more easily approached.
Yeah.
So people will come over and talk to you if you're standing at your desk working, and they'll come and chat, and it's much more open.
It's harder for people to sneak up on you.
Yeah, but it's also because like it's quite awkward when you're sitting down and someone walks over to you.
It's like an unequal footing, isn't it?
Yeah, so you feel like you have to stand up, or the person who's standing has to kneel down. You know, you have to get on the same level.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, because the desk area, the space on the desk is so big that people can just move their stuff over. They can actually literally stand next to each other.
Have you seen my desk?
Well, yeah. But
some of us just use it to store lots of junk on.
But you know, some of I noticed like Bradley and one of our designers and one of our developers like moving their equipment onto one desk so they could work together very closely.
Yeah, and I mean, Bradley, being a designer, is quite fastidious about his space, so it's always clear.
Yeah.
So he's
totally.
Very able to be flexible in his movement.
And I think one of the things we'll do when, you know, in future is our equipment, because we've got relatively new equipment now.
Who's we? Us.
Yeah, Booze.
Just thinking because you're moving. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we?
Probably as you guys start to replace that equipment out, you know, new computers and so on, you'll probably go in for laptops and.
Well, that's the idea. But I was really interested when Jeremy said yesterday they're not using the monitors. So I think the idea of thinking about that more carefully before we decide what we get is a pretty good one, because I'd be loath to get a bunch of fancy monitors and laptops if no one ever used the monitors.
What I'm really interested in as well is just some spaces that have got monitors in them, like a pod space where you've got a big screen. Because you know this concept.
It's a great idea.
We've talked about mod programming before, and Woody Zor and his team and the way they work. They all sit around one screen, and they work together and they solve complex problems as a team. So that's the BAs, the testers, the developers, the designers, all sitting in the same room. And I kind of, you know, that'd be a great thing to experiment with and see how powerful that is, because I think it has got some power. I think
absolutely. I think in general the idea of not having a monitor each is a great idea, because, you know, if we're trying to promote peer working, what better way than
just have some.
You know, obviously if you've got a laptop, you've still got your own screen should you need to. And I'd say the designers would still need a massive monitor.
So I would say that you probably don't need screen. If you do get screens, then you probably don't need them on every desk.
No, that's right.
And if you're activity based working, then you just come in, and if you want to work on a big screen that day, you can. You know.
And people can choose to, even if they wanted to just sit it on a sofa and work off a laptop all day, right?
That's right.
Although I don't think that's very good for your back, but you know, it's up to the individual, isn't it?
Beanbags.
Beanbags are okay for the bags.
That beautiful reclining chair we've got, you know.
The Courvoisier reproduction,
That's right.
That doesn't seem conducive to work. You're very much tipped back.
It's conducive to restful thinking.
I think it's fine for naps, and I'm not adverse to people having naps either. I think it's a really good idea. I wouldn't do it. I don't think I'd feel comfortable enough to be sort of snoring in the office, but I've certainly had colleagues who've taken naps during the day before in other companies. Never been a problem.
Yeah.
You just stretch out on the sofa, have a nap.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's something we used to do at school when I was at primary school.
I think we only did it in kindy, actually.
I think it was maybe
yeah.
When I say primary school, I mean 5 to 7.
Yeah.
And we used to
I think we had to stay awake from the age of 5, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it's cat naps. I think quite like it, is there?
But you know, like I say, it's just things that we should experiment with, or these are possibilities, you know, and try out the different possibilities and see what the opportunities are for different ways of working, because we are, you know, knowledge workers are. It's becoming a very different way of working for. You know, we're not in that
to the traditional headphones on in your pod. Don't talk to anyone.
And if we, like we say, because we're not building the same things over and over again, we're building different things. We're innovating all of the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we need to have an it's, you know, it's more like a laboratory than an office space, and that's the way we need to think. That's how
or at least it should be. And I think one of the ways to foster that is changing the environment.
That's right.
Yeah, if you, because the thing is, if you're looking to affect a change, environmental is one of the things that has a massive impact.
Yeah.
Is it something like 90% or something?
Yeah.
I think Nathan was quoting a while ago.
And we talk in Agile a lot about setting up a safe to fail environment. So because we want to encourage failure. Well, we don't want to encourage failure, but we want to encourage learning, and we want to get it done as quickly as possible. And failure is a way, is a way to learn. You know, you just need to conduct. We're constantly conducting sort of these experiments they're very short and sharp. If we learn. And like we say, we amplify these experiments if they work, and we dampen them if they don't. We try something different. So that environment is quite important. Really.
I was just thinking on the fly, we could totally try out this sort of sofa breakout idea by taking these out there and then just popping the round table in here for meetings. See how it works for a few weeks. Yeah. Can you do that tomorrow? No, I'm joking. You're not here tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not here tomorrow either. Next week.
Yeah.
I think that's about it for today. Although Rick is waving at me, I don't know why.
No, she's good.
All right, she's moving. Okay, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks very much.
And hopefully we will be back in 2 weeks without Paul. But as I say, perhaps he would like to come in and join us as a guest at some point and have a chat about his experiences at his new organisation.
Absolutely, and if you've got any thoughts, please post them.
Do, and we'll respond to that after. Thank you.
See you.